Ladies and gentlemen, I have to treat every single one of these videos now like it's the last. This could be Bernard Hopkins' last fight, November the 8th, 2014. I'm going to pray for him because honestly, if something happens to B-Hop, even though he's a boxer, I would cry. I meant what I said. Bernard the Executioner Hopkins, 55-6-2 with 32 knockouts. His last knockout was September the 18th, 2004 against Oscar De La Hoya at a catch weight of 156 pounds. I'm T-Street Controversy. This is T-Street Controversy Live. If you do not know, Bernard Hopkins is going to be taking on a sick freak. And I know I use this, I'm talking about power-wise. 25-0 with 23 knockouts. Sergey Kovalev, the WBO 175-pound champion. Bernard Hopkins was supposed to fight this guy a few years ago, but people forget that Kovalev was having some visa problems. And also, I'm thinking that Kovalev's promotional team wanted to keep him away from B-Hop at this point in time. Bernard Hopkins he says it himself, he's an alien. He's not of this world. He's 49 years old. He's going to be, when the fight happens, it says it's happening in Atlantic City, November the 8th, 2014. In January of next year, of 2015, he will be 50 years old. Now, this is what's going to happen. Win or loss, this is what happens. You win against B-Hop. It's like, oh, you won against an old man. You lose against B-Hop. Oh, you lost against the old man. It's a catch-22. You know, it's a difficult situation. But here, you have a guy who can knock the shit out of people. He's a body puncher. He can go up top, but he's never been past the 8th round. Bernard Hopkins, see, this is going to be a fight where I'm going to be honest with you. It may be what fans are calling a boring fight, a hug fest. But Bernard Hopkins don't give a shit about that. He's going in there to get the belt and get the win. And the question that fans have been asking is like, wait a minute. Isn't Bernard Hopkins a golden boy fighter? Isn't Bernard Hopkins an Al Heyman guy? Doesn't Bernard Hopkins only fight on Showtime? But he's fighting Kovalev on HBO. He showed up to Kovalev's last fight and just, you know, it's confusing to the fans. But I once said that, if you don't know, we don't know who is under Golden Boy contracts or not. We know who the Heyman fighters are, but we don't know who is under Golden Boy contracts or not. Bernard Hopkins is a shareholder in Golden Boy Promotions. He owns a little chunk of it. So, and he also, you know, helps promote the fights. So, when you look at the fact of, well, wait a minute, if you can go over there, now B-Hop is a legend, okay? He's a legend. So, you know, and he's got a lot of power in the boxing community. So, but if you can go over to HBO, you know, to get your belt, why can't these other guys go over there? Because B-Hop's main motivation for fighting right now at this age is to once again be an undisputed unified champion. That would be the WBC, the Ring Magazine, WBO, WBA, IBF. And right now, he is the closest to doing so in just 2 fights. If he beats Kovalev, which I'm predicting he's going to do, all he has to do is fight Adonis Stevenson, and either him or Adonis Stevenson is going to be the 175-pound champion of the world. Adonis Stevenson skated from HBO and cleanly ducked Sergey Kovalev. Now, Kathy Dova, the promotional team for our Sergey Kovalev, was pissed because it was like, yo, we had an agreement that Kovalev and Stevenson was going to fight, and Kovalev was left without an opponent. So she filed a lawsuit against Al Heyman. Now, all of a sudden, that lawsuit has been dropped, and Bernard Hopkins is taking the place of Adonis Stevenson. Like, okay, well, listen, I'm fighting. You know, I want that belt anyway. Just drop the lawsuit. You know, and that's the way it looks to me. That's the way it looks to fans. So it just begs the question of, like, well, wait a minute. If B-Hop can do it, then Floyd can do it. Robert Guerrero can do it. Amir Khan can do it. You get what I'm saying? It's like, we know he's been fighting on Showtime, and we know if you haven't watched his post-fight interview after the Shumenov fight, after the Tavoris Cloud fight, after the Karo Marat fight, he's expressed that he's wanted to unify the belts, and that he's wanted this boxing, as he called it. He's the first person I've ever heard use the term. He wanted this boxing Cold War to end. So him making that step and doing whatever he did to be able to go over to HBO, a place he hasn't been in quite some time, and get a Kovalev fight, and everything's already signed, sealed, and delivered, that shows a lot of power, and it makes you wonder, like, why the other guys not doing it? But as far as the fight is concerned, Bernard Hopkins is going to use every single one of his tricks in the book. Don't be surprised with the dirty shots, the headbutts, and excessive holding, because he's going to try to get Kovalev out of this game. Kovalev is going to make sure he keeps his arms free. He's got to make sure he keeps his arms free at all time, because Bernard Hopkins is going to try to grab him, hold him, turn him, get him a little blow while the ref is not seeing. But Kovalev has got to be able to fight that type of fight. He's got to learn, how to go the distance. People are saying he's going to knock Bernard Hopkins out. I'm thinking, like, Hopkins ain't never been knocked out. How you going to say somebody is going to get knocked out that hasn't been knocked out? And Hopkins has taken some crazy punches. He took some clean shots from Jean Pascal. He took some clean shots from Shumenov. So even on Caprello. So what I'm saying is, Bernard Hopkins' all-around ring ability and fundamentals and savviness, and also that little bit of dirtiness, is going to get him through the fight. Now, do I think it's going to be rough? Do I think Bernard Hopkins may go down? See, it's crazy, because when it comes to Kovalev, I can't think of somebody that Bernard Hopkins has fought that was actually in their prime. And the last person I think about is that was actually in their prime and clean cut, with no problems, was Kelly Pavlik, but that was at, a whole other division. Kelly Pavlik wasn't at before. And then you think about all the way back to Jermaine Taylor. That's when Bernard Hopkins was really overmatched when it came to Jermaine Taylor. And now, I'm talking about fighting a young guy. Now you got this other young guy who just so happens to be a knockout artist. Bernard Hopkins has got to be given credit. And it's a tough fight, because Bernard Hopkins is almost 50 years old. You know what I think? I always wondered, like, what would a day be like if Bernard Hopkins called you up and said, listen, we're going to spend 24 hours together. I want you to learn the life of B-Hop. I think that his day probably start at 2 a.m. He's probably like doing his bills, taking his vitamin supplements. Once 6 a.m., once 3 a.m. get there, 4 a.m., he's already at the gym training and sparring. 8 o'clock, he's right there at getting his old people pills, his prescriptions and all that, and getting, he probably sees his doctor every week. He seems like the type of guy that just drives around like really, really slow, and just talk your head off and just talking to you about old ass boxing news. Probably go to the gas station, keep getting regular, go inside, get an apple juice, and then bitch and complain that the apple juice is $1.79. Like, what? $1.79? I can go, knowing that he's rich, like, I can go. See, this is what's wrong with America. And then he started telling you some story, about like why apple juice is that expensive. And what you notice about him is he's a very private dude. But what I have been seeing is that he's getting like older and older. He'd be rambling, and he'd be like, what is he talking about? He probably just drives like really slow, but he drives so close on the passenger side that if you're on the passenger side, the window open, you like this because you think he's gonna hit a mirror, but he's always in control. T Street Controversy Live.